Yo, what's happening?
Of course. There's no need to stand on ceremony here, Mr. Wayne.
It would be pretty awesome to be Bruce Wayne, wouldn't it?
No.
Well,
Bane. That comes later.
There's no conversation here. There's a bunch
There's
of
no
quotes
conversation here. Speak of the devil, and he shall appear.
Oh, that's good. That's good. You've definitely honed the Bane, the inner Bane. Watch out, world. He's coming.
I'm not allowed to do it in my house, so I have to do it now. I mean, I'm
good.
in my house. I just can't do it around my wife. I've been exiled to do Bane.
So good.
Welcome to the More in Common podcast. This is a place where we explore the fact that we have more in common than that which divides us by anchoring humanity in compassionate conversation. I'm Azzy, a new listener, and I'm happy to be introducing today's show. Now remember, you can find all things More in Common at moreincommonpod.com, like their episodes, merchandise, blogs, and more. Of course, if you like what you hear, give them a like in your favorite podcast app and leave a review. It helps promote the show and get more ears on the amazing conversations. Even better, if you leave a review, we will try to read it on a future show and share. On to today's episode, as a part of 2020, A Decade Possible. This is Season 3, A Pursuit. Today, the guys are with Theresa G. Theresa has a great personal story that certainly inspires going forward and making things happen in life. In this conversation, they talk about a lot of things, like making the jump to entrepreneurship, coming up in a low-income family, standing up for herself, being anorexic, being mixed, her podcast, and what led to her start. Enjoy today's amazing conversation with the Theresa G.
There is a lot of just me trying to always fit in, and me always being the black girl in my childhood and in my life, which I love now. I love that. But as a child, it really made me insecure because I was always getting stared at everywhere we went. And I was always the odd one out. And to anyone out there in that sort of situation, I would just want to say now I know that I am valuable enough to stand up and say, you know what, if you ever touch me like that again, or if you ever talk to me like that again, it's going to be a problem. So this is your warning. And I suggest that it's so hard when you're in it, but it will just change your life to either break out of it or just use your voice.
Welcome back to the show. Today we are with Theresa from the Good with Theresa G podcast. Theresa is a mother, wife, activist, entrepreneur, and lover of nature. Her deepest love affair has always been with nature. She enjoys traveling and immersing herself in different cultures and people. She loves learning from other people. And as she says, everyone on this planet is so unique but similar. Theresa is an entrepreneur. She has created and owned a few successful businesses, some not so successful too. Her background is in social services, environmental education, and design. She has spent the last 10 years with a focus on designing spaces that support the health and well-being of people and our planet. In 2017, she woke up and decided she needed to start a podcast, bringing all her passion for connection together into a platform with the goal of focusing on the good in the world. The podcast inspires, rewires, and educates, exploring the opportunities that current global, societal, economic, planetary, and health challenges have created. Thanks for joining us, Theresa.
I'm excited to be here. Thank you for asking me to come on.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us. We're super excited. So to kick off,
actually, I think technically you reached out, and I was just slow to respond because I never checked the DMs like I'm supposed to. You were super gracious and super patient with me, so I appreciate that.
Well, remember you sent me a video on Instagram. It was the first video I got on Instagram, actually. And it was, I don't know when it was. And you're like, do you want to be on my podcast? And I was like, whoa. And then I said, do you want to be on my podcast? And you said, and then you never responded.
Oh, that's why. You know what? That's why it took.
And I was thinking, maybe he doesn't want to be on the podcast.
So the answer is yes.
So that's now I remember. Yeah, when you asked that question, basically I got scared and went away. Because we've only done one podcast interview, and that's a goal for later this year. But at that moment, I was absolutely not ready to talk.
Yeah,
on a podcast,
and I totally respect that too. You know, I mean, I'm totally fine with that. But you're always,
but I didn't realize it.
Come on.
Well, we would love to.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize it though, because now I would just say, "Hey, I'm not in a place to do that." But then I just like tucked my tail and just like ran, like
it just disappeared.
I think that's totally
no answer.
Acceptable. I think that's totally acceptable, and I respect that fully. So, but you know, you guys do have open invitation, because anytime I listen to your podcast, I'm like, darn, these guys, I need to get them on. Need to understand, you know, well, it's like you guys are special. So
thank you. We appreciate that. We'll definitely need to coordinate that ASAP. I'm excited. So, but to start today's show, one thing that forever intrigues us as budding entrepreneurs ourselves is this idea of that moment, right? When others, because we haven't had it yet, went full commitment to their entrepreneurial ambitions. And you say it in your bio. You had that one of those moments yourself where you just woke up, said to your husband, my soul was dying and I had to quit my 6-figure job. Mm-hmm. You have a family. You have a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
You have a husband. And you still decided to do it. I'm curious, because this decision is this framework that we sit in right now. So how long did it take to get there? Mm-hmm. How long did it, like, what was that buildup like? And then, like, seriously, how did you do it?
Well, you know, I did it in a way that I always tell my siblings in particular, don't do what I do. Do what I say.
Yeah, and, I give better advice than I live. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it was all a seed that actually my father-in-law planted when I first met him 25 years ago, because he was always working for himself, and he gave me the Rich Dad Poor Dad books, and I remember, and he talked to me and my husband. My husband's never really worked for anyone else either, so. He has that seed from his dad, and he gave us the Rich Dad Poor Dad books, and that was when it was really popular. I bet both of you guys have. Have either of you read those books?
I've read most of it.
I've read the first. I've read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I haven't read the series any of them.
So I remember reading that while we were driving to Denver. Like, I read it out loud to my husband because I get, you know, really into stuff. So. That was the first seed, and that was when I started my first job, and that was my first business, and that was actually called Sunshine Weeding, and weeding, like weeding,
pulling weeds.
Mm-hmm. Oh. And we had these purple shirts with these sunshines on them, and because I was a teacher, so we would spend the summer. I get all of my teacher friends, and we'd spend the summer weeding. People's gardens and garden beds. And it was a great side business. And that was my first business. And that I started probably, I want to say 6 months after reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It just sort of inspired me. So that was the beginning. And then
it sounds like sorry to interrupt, but that first business, like high school kids who have the entrepreneur spirit, like gather their friends and go do things. I love it. It's like gather teachers and do it. You know, I love that. I think it's awesome.
And because, you know, we don't work in the summer, you have it off as a teacher. So it worked out well.
Right.
But then I got a job, a good job. And I sort of put that business to sleep because I was working too much and I didn't have time to do that anymore. So I had I've always been a really goal-oriented person. And when I was younger, it was really just about money. because I came from a lower class family, and I was the first one to go to college. All my siblings have gone to college though now, and I just had a goal. Like, I needed to make money. I wanted to make money. I wanted to help my family out. I wanted to make money. So that was my mantra.
So when
when I was younger.
real quick, when you said you got a good job, is that what you mean? Like, you were making money, making good money?
Well, and it was filling a lot of my passions. It was working for our local university, and it was focusing on education and hands-on education, which I'm a huge advocate for hands-on education. And I was working for a program that I have adored since I was like 12. It's called, well, they've changed their name a lot, but when I worked for them, it was Jason Project. And they take kids all over the world on science expeditions. So it was like everything really for me. It was like my passions, the money, the fact that it was at the university, so it had good benefits and all of those things, you know?
Yeah. Makes sense.
But that was the thing, is that was my major goal, was money, to make money. And it's not until later in life, and that's when I quit my 6-figure job. And that environment was pretty toxic, even though I have to say I learned so much from that job, and I learned a lot about what my potential was. And this isn't the university job. This is my next job, which was in sales. And
got it.
Oh, sales.
Yeah,
We
sales.
love and hate thee.
And imagine me coming in from only working in nonprofits and at the university into sales. So it's like
that's a shift. That is a shift.
And I give it, we're just blanketly talking about sales. Not all sales organizations or companies are toxic or bad.
Oh no.
But the job itself definitely has some parallels across all.
But it has that like, that's the je ne sais quoi. It's the feeling. Like, you say sales, everybody's like, ugh.
Yeah.
Like, used car. Like, I don't want to talk to a salesperson. That sounds horrible.
Question: how long were you at the Jason Project or the university? How long were you there before you went to sales, and what made you go to sales?
Well, so that was my second real job after graduating college, because my first job was working in a one-room schoolhouse. So I don't know, I think I was there for like 2 or 3 years. And what happened is that foundation was changing and evolving. So my actual role wasn't really going to be needed anymore. And I went into sales because, as you make money, your expectations go up higher then. You're like, okay, so now I'm making what? $40,000 a year. So now I want to make $100,000 a year, and that's what we all work off of, as we climb the ladder. So I think
somebody explain it is there's the theory of the hedonic treadmill, which is like, I got a Civic and it's really nice. Now I want to, whatever, the SI, the next version. Like, I want to make more money.
Exactly.
The treadmill that we're all on. Yeah.
Exhausting.
Exactly. So, yeah, and I had a girlfriend that I had graduated with, and she college with, and she was talking to me about her job, and it just happened to be such they were looking for someone, and it just happened to work perfectly. So I started there before I'd even quit my other job, and it was a really powerful experience overall. So I guess I'm going to mostly focus on the positive of that experience.
I like that. Yeah.
Because it really showed me the power of me manifesting and putting goals out there and just banging out those goals, because people are like, those goals are impossible. And, there was no impossibility. And that was really awesome. My younger spirit was very, very like, nothing's impossible. And I still believe that, but with a little more life experience, sometimes I'm like, let's sort of let's adjust.
Dial it back. I just don't want to do that.
So it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about my personal potential. And it really pushed me in the design field, which I really, really appreciate that aspect of it. And it really pushed me into natural design, because I realized one thing, I've always been consistent ever since I was younger, is that I have to be creating positive change to feel fulfilled in my life. And so I had a conversation with myself in the middle of that job, like after a year and a half in, or 2 years. And I was thinking, what am I doing to create positive change? And
after you're still talking the sales job, not
Yeah.
the design job yet. Okay.
yeah,
Making
and
sure.
I was like, well, I'm making people smile every day. I'm compassionate with people. I make people's days brighter. But that ended up not being enough for me. So what had happened is I got really tired of just chasing numbers and just putting those numbers as like the master of everything. And I felt like there was a lot of sexual undertones, and I just didn't know how to deal with that coming from a educational background and a university background. I didn't know how to deal with that. And so I didn't really know how to stand up for myself. As a woman, I didn't understand how to stand up for myself. I was younger, and now would be a totally different experience. Like, come on, I will put you right in your place. No problem.
If you don't mind, I know you wanted to stick more to the positive, but I'm curious because this is not the first time that this has been brought up by a woman on her podcast. So sexual undertones, like, can you give any examples or
Hey, what did that
explain
look
like what it feel like, or what did that mean for you as a woman in sales?
Yeah.
Well, my workforce, it was very sexual, and there was a lot of alcohol involved in the socializing of the company, of the mentality of the company. And so a lot of inappropriate things would happen, and inappropriate things and inappropriate advances. And I didn't even know how to handle it. I'll tell you honestly, I just didn't know. And I'm teaching my daughter at a very young age that you are in charge of your body, and immediately when you feel uncomfortable, you voice that immediately. I didn't know how to respond. So I would just let things go, or even, just go along with them. And it would get to the point where I was like, do I tell my husband, and then I'm like, he will make me quit right away. And I've never made this much money, and it's going to turn into a huge thing. And I live in a small town, and there was a lot of that. And now I appreciate that experience because I now know what exactly I would do.
What did that, I mean, it sounds like there was a lot of emotional, psychological struggle with that. Like, how long did it take you to manage through I mean, obviously you have a strong perspective on it now, and there was a good learning, but what did it take you to get there?
It took me waking up and saying, I need to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, it was that moment then, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. And then it took a few years to process all that, to be honest.
Yeah.
It took a few years, and it catapulted me in a place of really looking for authentic, living an authentic lifestyle, and recognizing that I can make large amounts of money without ever sacrificing my ethics. And that is the bottom line. And so that it really changed my whole focus to around business in general, that I can create positive change while making large amounts of money, while keeping with my own ethics and being a very ethical person and standing up for myself.
What was it that got, like, because it's one thing to just say, I need out. Like, this is obviously a messed up environment, right? Mm-hmm. I'm going to quit. What led to the realization that you don't need that to make the money that you want to make, and you can do it in a more positive way?
Well, you know what? I was making so much money, and I was spending all that money on trying to heal my soul. I was spending tons of money on going to retreats and going to spas and doing all these things that I thought would make me feel better, and I just never felt better. And so, when I realized that, I was like, wow, so it doesn't even matter. I don't need to put myself through this, because it doesn't even matter how much money I make, because I can't fix my spirit. I can't fix my soul because I'm going against all of my values and my ethics,
So you were almost spending the money fixing how you made the money, or how the culture that you were in to make the money. And huh.
Yeah.
And so you left, and that led to doing design that also made you a good amount of money, and you didn't have to sacrifice all of those things.
Right. It was interesting because when I left, it wasn't pretty. Like, I tried to cut it nicely, and it just, it was the continuation of just the whole thing, of not being ethical, not being honest. And so a lot of the people that I worked with actually reached out to me, and I actually had to change my phone number. Like, a lot of my clients would not stop leaving me alone. Like, you need to start your own business. This is because when I was transitioning, I was going to start a solar business. I had bought a solar franchise. So I already had that in line. But my clients would just kept reaching out to me and saying, you need to go after this and do this because this is something you're really good at. So they sort of propelled me starting my own design company.
Oh, interesting. Oh,
That's kind of cool.
well, that's cool. And then you did that for 10 years.
Yeah. And I actually got studied for my master's in regenerative ecological design, and that was life-changing. So it was a great thing because it made me go back to my roots. My roots is I love nature. I am more of the crunchy hippie type, but not really, but in the sense of that I love being in nature. I really believe what we're around and what we're doing impacts us in a large, substantial way. So I believe that our house is like our third skin, our clothing being our second skin. So I believe that what we use to build our homes and what we are putting in our homes affects us on so many levels. So I was able to delve into that, and really, because as soon as I started my own business, I actually, the premise of my design company, is that, we use sustainable, renewable products. And then after studying regenerative ecological design, it became more of like, well, we need to use, just because something's recycled doesn't mean that it's healthy for you, because it could be off-gassing at large amounts. So, it started a whole new big adventure in my life. And like any situation, it made me stronger. It made me know exactly what I accept in my life now.
Yeah.
And so
it really was just a soul-sucking need to get out type of situation, and then you started your own business.
That's it.
That's awesome.
That was a long answer, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's a good answer. It's a good answer.
But it's good context, right? Because go ahead, Rod.
Well, I'm just curious, it's, maybe to cap off on it. Like, you said you were afraid to tell your husband about it because what he would think. Did you have that conversation like as you were leaving or after you left? Or what was that? What was that conversation? What was that like?
He knows the whole thing. It was like, first of all, he was really angry, and I knew he was going to be angry. And so he's not an aggressive person, but I was concerned about his response. But yeah, he was pretty angry for quite a while about it. And he was like, I don't know why you even allowed that stuff to go on, but I totally love you, and I'll, whatever, you need to do. So,
So he was supportive about the next step. That response. That's
awesome. A cool response.
Yeah.
Like, it seems simple, but like, to be mad and to be like, but I'll support you is not easy.
Right.
And it's one of those things, like, when it comes to like sexual situations, sexual assault, sexual abuse, and it's been reported quite a bit that especially teenagers or young women are afraid to tell their men in their lives because not just
Their response,
because of
yeah.
their response, right? Like, I don't want my
Or
dad
even-
to go to jail because he killed the dude, right?
Right.
That type of
Or because my dad said he would if
Right.
man, if he, like, so
if
I don't
anybody
want
ever
that
touched you,
possibility.
I'm gonna kill him and throw him through, and I don't.
Like, I don't want to put him in that
burden
situation.
of
So
putting
like,
my dad in jail. Yeah,
which is it's heavy.
yeah.
It is heavy. And to anyone out there in that sort of situation, I would just want to say now I know that I am valuable enough to stand up and say, you know what? If you ever touch me like that again, or if you ever talk to me like that again, it's going to be a problem. So this is your warning. And I suggest that it's so hard when you're in it, but it will just change your life to either break out of it or just use your voice, or men too. I mean, whoever's dealing with sexual,
Anybody.
yeah, anyone,
Like, your value, that's a big one. Keith, I don't know if I ever told you this. My wife, we were dating in college. We were at this bar, and we're walking through like the dance floor, and some guy grabbed her ass, and like before I could make any move or even really have a thought, she had grabbed his shirt and pushed him up against the wall, and like grabbed his junk, but squeezed and like grabbed, and she was like, "How do you like that?" And then just like walked off, and I was like, "All right,
I want to meet your wife."
I was like, I don't have to do it.
Yeah.
We're good.
I
was
don't
just like,
feel
we're
that
good.
obligation. Yeah,
I just looked at him like, we're good
You
here.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
See, I want to understand how you create someone that has that non-accept. Like, no.
It's a lot through. I mean, it's her mom. Like, her mom's kind of a no bullshit. Like, you're not gonna walk all over her.
Very strong, independent, female-minded, which ultimately speaks. Like, let's dig into this. Take a pivot and go into it. You said you came from a lower class family. Like, what does that mean?
Low income. I used the wrong word.
Okay, yeah,
Low
that's
income.
fair. I kind of knew what you meant.
A lot of
Yeah.
wrong words.
It's all good.
Don't
That's
we
why we
all?
ask for
It's called
clarity.
motherhood.
Yeah.
But,
It's called English. English is just cacophony of using the wrong word.
I came from a low income family. My mom is white, and my stepdad is he is Hispanic. We've always lived in the interesting thing is we always lived in.
Your stepdad's Hispanic. What's your dad?
My dad is Jamaican, and I never met him. But we always lived in really white areas. So part of, and I think that part of my not using my voice is always just have wanting to fit in. I went to Columbine High School. I was the only black girl there. And
Columbine, like, were you there
Like the
in
Columbine?
'95?
I wasn't there. No, I wasn't there. I had just graduated, but I did know.
Wow.
I knew Eric Harris, and I went to school with his brother, and so there is a lot of just me trying to always fit in, and me always being the black girl in my childhood and in my life, which I love now. I love that. But as a child, it really made me insecure because I was always getting stared at everywhere we went. And I was always the odd one out. And
Did you realize it then, or did you realize it looking back?
that I was the odd one out? Yeah. Well, I mean, when the kids are like, this is the sweetest thing. When I was in elementary, the kids were like, did you notice your mom left you in the sun too long?
Mm.
I never noticed. Oh my god! And I went home. I'm like, Mom, you left me out in the sun. So she's like, no. Everyone, skin is the color of rainbows, and I'm like, oh my gosh, phew. But that's when I realized that I was different, and that was like in first or second grade, I think.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead.
Well, I gotta go back to this, and if you don't want to talk about it, it's okay. You talked right past your dad and that, and so I'm curious. Like you had mentioned earlier, realizing your value, and I'm wondering if any of that has to do with the non-existent relationship with your dad, especially with the black thing, like feeling connected to it or not, because it literally wasn't
Because
there.
he was that part, and your stepdad was Hispanic, so it's like it's not the same, right?
Yeah, I do think that was a part of it. Because when you're younger and you don't see anyone that looks like you, it really makes you feel, like you don't fit in.
Some type of way, as the kids say.
Yeah, it makes you feel some type of way, and then the irony of going to like schools where I would just be the only black girl, and maybe there'd be a black guy or two, but we would never talk. It was a weird.
Oh no, there was no solidarity, no like.
No, it was odd. Yeah, my childhood. There was a lot of amazing things about my childhood, but my skin color definitely was something. Like I'll tell. Like I always felt like I had a disability. I explain it like that. I started working with disabled kids because that's what I felt like I really blended, like felt like I could be on the same level with them.
They understood.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it was my passion. I spent all my summers volunteering at Easter Seals handy camps, and it was my favorite time of year. And yeah, it was an interesting childhood. And then of course I went to therapy when I got to college, and I realized that it was a lot of the staring and just feeling like I didn't fit in that would make me put a lot of pressure on myself to like try to look perfect and just undue pressure.
So
you said, of course, I went to therapy when I got to college. That is not something I did until I was very old in my life.
I did too, but
what propelled you to go to therapy in college?
Well, I was bulimic
motivated.
anorexic. Mm-hmm. So I feel like this is a therapy session. But
it's not.
That happens from time to time on our show.
Sometimes people are like, "I'm on a couch right now." I'm like, "Not really. We just want to know you. Like, we want to get to know you." But like, bulimic anorexic, and
go back and listen to a few of our episodes that we do on this topic.
On it, yeah.
It was the biggest shift, though. Because I did get into therapy at 18, and it was my school paid for it, my university, and it was intense therapy. And basically, I just realized I was sitting in my apartment, and I realized, like, I'm never going to be able to be successful at anything if I have this addiction. And if I'm stuck in this, addiction of food and hatred of my body. I'm like, I'll never find a husband. I'll never be able to do good in my job because I was, like, failing out of school, and it was one of those when you're at the bottom of the barrel moments.
When did bulimia, anorexia hit for you? When did that start, and what led to it? I'm sure you've done enough work to answer that question. It
started in high school, at the end of high school, and what led to it is me not feeling like I fit in, and I needed to. I was overweight. I was an overweight high schooler kid, and as soon as I hit puberty, I started gaining weight. And I think a lot of that was just finding food was my friend. I'd come home from school and I would just eat a lot of food because it was tough. School was tough for me. It's interesting because I've never, as a child, there was moments of a lot of racism as a child. And I feel like it helped to make me who I am today. But at the same time, it was really underground. It was like an underground thing, but kids will take what their parents are doing underground and come out and say it out loud.
Yeah, so they don't even understand it. They're just like,
yeah. So they're like,
you were left in the sun too long.
Yeah. But that was the nice version of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think I just didn't know what to do with all that. I didn't know how to handle being different. And, my mom did the best she could. She's a beautiful white, Italian woman. And, but she didn't really know, what to do either. And
yeah, sure.
I mean, props to my mom. She had me, I was born in 1978. So not far from when they were integrating schools. I was one of the, I don't know if this is one of her stories or not, but supposedly I was one of the first Black babies born on the Eugene census. Because there's like in Eugene, Oregon, there's an area where all the Blacks lived, but it wasn't directly in Eugene. It was outside of Eugene. And so I can't imagine bringing in a child in with all that contentious time going on. And especially living as a white woman your whole life. So not really understanding the underlining
Oregon in general has
exposure is different. Oh, a lot of it
has some real strong race issues.
Portland, boy,
damn near the South issues.
Yeah.
Like Oregon's has some strong racial divide, and
they
still
really
does.
Do even
I'm from Indiana. I did not know until I moved to California. I did not know this about Oregon.
I didn't even know that
for Portland.
I didn't know that at all.
Yeah,
so,
Portland in particular, like the development of Portland, and
it was basically kind of to be a white bastion, like away from the colored folk.
A lot of black.
That's what it was intended to be.
But you know what's interesting though is so in high school there was this Black counselor lady, and she was like, "You need to go to an all Black college," and I was like, "Oh no, like because I was in like, Atlanta or something, and I'm with all my white friends or whatever, and they're like, "Why are you talking white, girl? And what's going on with you? Why are you hanging out with whites?" So it's that integration of being mixed that now is so beautiful and so accepted. But in those days, there was like that's probably why I felt like I was.
Choose your lane.
There was no
this
lane.
Was a guidance counselor?
Yeah.
Guidance counselor said were they white or Black?
She was Black.
Black.
Yeah.
She was Black. And what was her context? Like, was she just like, you need to get around some Black people, or?
I think so. Mm-hmm. I think so.
But she didn't share her reasons for it.
I don't remember, but I just remember being petrified. I'm like, I talk white, I act white, whatever all these things are. But
you've spent all this time finding your identity around this white culture, and now you go around this culture, and they're telling you you're wrong. Did you feel like afraid of being alienated again and having to start over, like finding yourself?
Well, yeah, and I had never had at that time. I had never had good experience when I was put in Black areas. So, even walking downtown Denver, I would like get crap from Black people. It was a weird. Now that we're talking about all this, it was a very weird paradigm, and I understand now as an adult in reflection how me going through all this development, but having nothing that looked like me was challenging, or that that I could relate to.
And to add some context for people listening, like your complexion is lighter than mine, and there is within Black communities often a negative stereotype against light skinned folk, like, oh well, they got it easier, or they can pass, or whatever it is. You're just different. Like you're too dark. Like it's weird. You're too Black, or you're not Black enough. Like, but there's never an okay with inside even the Black paradigm. Yeah. So you were getting it on both ends. It's like, plus if you sound how you sound, I sound how I sound. Like I get people all the time like, oh, are you a white guy? I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And it's like, but I talk white, and I would love to talk about talking white, because I think that's an end, or talking Black, or talking whatever. Like
trouble. Depends on who you're talking to, though.
It does depend on who you're talking to, and then like I mean personally, I think that code switching is a real thing. Like I learned it very directly, very young, but it's but from a just a conceptual level, like what does that mean? Like we're all talking. How I sound is how I sound. Like there are Black folk that sound like like there was one time where I was talking like this to Keith, and he was like, oh, he's like, I can't remember exactly what you said, but I was like, yo, there are actually Black Brits. Like it's not a white accent. It is actually just an accent that anybody can hold.
No, that Western European way of thinking or talking is white. And then
it's interesting to me that it even is a deal. But how you talk is what
is how you talk.
Like, yeah, I mean, how you talk is how you talk.
Yeah. And
but
like,
we get. I think it's as we group and categorize, and it's easier for us to just be like, well, if you talk like that, then you're from the hood,
it's become such
it's
become such a cultural thing that like when you think about the stereotype, like black men are lower economic and all these things, but if you grow up in an all black suburb or cul-de-sac where everybody has a it's just a
six-figure jobs, Lexuses, whatever.
Everybody talks normal. That's not white or black. But then you go into this part of town where you're in an all-black area and they are less educated. In the same way that, like, if you go into the sticks or in a lower economic area that's all white, like the dialect of English is extremely different than my cul-de-sac here in Ohio.
100%.
Yet they're not considered, like, we're all considered talking white, but they're not considered talking black. What are they talking? They get their own unique dialect, right? Versus it being a racial thing. It's a weird social construct that it exists, and it's silly.
It needs to die.
It's interesting though, because in high school or college, I was working with this family they were really poor, and they had like 7 or 8 kids, and they were in Montana, the whitest place ever, right? And I love Montana, and I'd have to say I've really never felt any discrimination here, which is amazing.
I have some stories about Montana.
But they had this deep South accent, those kids, and they'd never left Montana, and it was like this slang, and it was just so interesting to me that they had that accent.
And then what do you call it, right? Like, it's not white, it's not black, right? Like, why it doesn't have some racial tag to it? Yeah,
right.
You
It's
put
more
a
of a
little
low income tag, I think.
It is for sure, but it's economic. It's not. It's economically driven versus racially driven, right? Like you talk that way because of the color of your skin. Nope, that's not the way that works. I can promise you that.
That's true.
So I have to reconcile something though, because I'm very fascinated by your story. It makes sense to me that you had that journey in sales, right? Like, given your need for identity and that struggle to fit in and not knowing how to handle that ecosystem and like all of that stuff, like, logically. Yet earlier you said when your younger self, nothing was impossible. Mm-hmm. Where does that come from? Like, where does that mentality come from? Because it's like then all of a sudden you got out of it and now you are where you are. That mentality kind of drives you through it all. So where does nothing is impossible come from for you?
I think from dealing with some hardships in my life and getting through them and becoming stronger. And I always everything that happens.
You proved it to yourself.
Yeah, everything that happens to me, I'm always like, what is my lesson here? What am I supposed to learn that I can take on?
Who taught you that? Who taught you that? Who taught you to ask that question?
Probably my mom.
Your mom?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. How did she do that? I'm curious. Like, as a parent, like wanting to impart these things on my children.
I think she would just say that. Like, it was like, she was never, like, we won't sit here and feel bad for ourselves. We will be proactive. And part of that proactive response was like, well, what did you learn from this? What do you think, you can do to make sure this never happens? Or what would you do? It was always a proactive response.
How was she then? I mean, through, especially like anorexia and bulimia, it can be hard when someone says, like, what are we learning from this? Like, how was she during that period?
That was a tough period for her, because I think a lot of the loved ones in my life were just frustrated. Like, it's frustrating to observe someone you love doing that to themselves. So that one, that's when we had to call. That's why I'm so thankful I had the therapists I had, because they were able to help me recognize a lot of those issues were from the fact that I never felt like I belonged. That was the core issue there, and they were able to teach me how to love myself, for my differences. And I don't even know how they did that, but I came out of
therapy. Dang it! That's what I was going to ask. That was next. Let's say for those listening who might need the same information, like what was the journey of learning to love yourself?
Maybe some pieces. I walked out of that 2-year or 3-year intensive session. I had this amazing therapist, and I can't even remember her name. But I would give her cards on Mother's Day, because I was like, you become a second mom to me.
Wow.
Yeah. Because you rebuilt my spirit in a way that only a mom could do. And so I just remember coming out of there, and I all of a sudden just loved my uniqueness. And I started to play off of it. Like, I love my curly hair. I love that I get attention. I love that I get attention because I'm Black and unique, and I made a decision at that time, is that, you know what, if I'm the first Black person you're going to meet in your life, I want it to be the best experience for you and me, so that you can remember that I'm, I'm breaking the stereotypes. So at that point, because that was a big issue for me, as people would stare at me a lot. And I would just start smiling when they stared, smiling at them, and like talk to them, and sort of break down the barriers. Once I was able to step out of myself and recognize that they were just intrigued, it helped me so much. But when I was taking it all in as like something's wrong with me, it's all your perception. When I was thinking something was wrong with me, then I wasn't able to step out of myself and interact with people and recognize that it's a great opportunity to say, like, I'm no different than you.
Like, you have this, and just kind of tying part of your bio into this, because it's fascinating ability. You're intrigued by other people. You love strangers. You love talking to strangers. You love talking to people, because we're all similar. As we like to say, we all have more in common than we don't, right? Yet you've been stared at your whole life. You've been alienated in many ways, treated disrespectfully. I mean, the list goes on. Yet you have this inherent ability to see that truth. Like, what is it that you're channeling to do that? And how do you remind yourself? And do you forget that sometimes? I mean, like, where is that inside of you,
That's a good question. I just have a huge belief that the good outweighs the bad, and that I'm here to learn. I've always believed that what we are right now, there's so much more than that. So I believe in energy. I believe in that there's much greater things happening in the universe at this very moment than we could even possibly imagine. So, and I find a lot of that in nature, because nature is so amazing, and you cannot even mentally comprehend. I mean, scientists and biologists, and they're always trying to find out more, but we have no idea how all this spectacular stuff comes together. Right. I look out my window and I see this huge mountain, and there's snow, and it's just so gorgeous. So I think my faith in something beyond myself always brings me back to, like, what is the lesson? And like, I'm here to grow. I'm here to become a better person. And so
I was just getting ready to ask where nature came into this for you. And that is you answered it, like, beautifully. Faith in something beyond yourself. We talked about that a little bit yesterday, Keith. Mm-hmm. I think that's a very, almost poetic way you said it. what does nature mean to you? Like do you just love, like, what does it mean to you, and or like how do you experience nature? Like what's
I think that's
what's
a good question. Yeah.
yeah.
What does it mean?
Experience nature?
Okay, so I have to get out into nature every day. It's one of my life hacks. I I go outside. I either like, but the lucky thing is I live in a very remote place, and I live where I can just walk out my front door and take a long walk, and the birds are chirping, and there's beautiful trees, and there's mountains, and so it's really easy for me to get out in nature. But nature is my place. It's my church. It's my balancing place. It's the place where I feel completely connected to everything around me, and I can find complete peace.
I understand that. I did this hike with my wife, like I don't know, it was like a long hike out in some remote mountains, and we got back. I was like, man, like I have never felt more like myself than this time. Like I didn't even know where my phone was. Like I just loved being, and I don't even know if I can really fully explain what it felt like, but other than being like myself, which was really cool.
There's such a biological connection all of us have, right? Sharing the same elemental properties with a mountain that we do with another human being. And when you're out there, you feel it. You feel those natural vibrations. It's I mean, I still, when I think about my time in Alaska that I went 12 years ago, I still feel it. Like just sitting there looking at Mount McKinley, Mount Denali, and off the port, just like the feeling, just being on a ice, a glacier, right? And like just that feeling that you have. It's a different world, and that's awesome.
I agree with you because in the sense it reminds me how very small I am in this huge, huge world. And it puts things in perspective every time I'm out there.
Yeah. So you said earlier, you said, I have to be creating positive change to be fulfilled in my life. And the way you said it was so resolute. Like you just know, it sounded like it's you. When did you figure that out? When or how?
That's a good question because I pretty much have known that my whole life. I was like born into that, and
makes sense.
That's always been my goal, is like to create positive. That is just ever since I can remember, I would.
So do you find since it's always been there as long as you can remember, did you just find like maybe in a sales job, like the further away you got from it, the less happy you were, and then that probably led to that snapping point of like, I got to get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
How did you like accept that though? Like, I think that's the hard thing I know it is for me. Like, okay, these things are there, but now I got to accept that is what I want. Like, that is the true me. Like, is it just, well, this is it? Or is there something more there?
Well, it was like my soul is going to die. And if I don't listen to what I know I need, and so I can either spend all my days trying to band-aid up my soul and keep doing this, or I can just listen to what my soul needs. And I think that's one of the biggest lessons that whole experience taught me, is that I had to I was pushing away my intuition and what I know I need that whole time. And I sort of had to retrain myself to start listening, because I was saying, yeah, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Like, I'll get through this. And I wonder, for me, that it was very, very clear that I was just not going to be a happy person. I could have all the money in the world, but who cares if your soul isn't vibrant and happy? And
that clarity, it's admirable. I mean, I just listened to your story, and it's just like fraught with potential to go in a totally different direction in your attitude about everything. It's outstanding, which now has led you to run this amazing podcast. Like, why the platform that you've chosen? How did that come about? How did you figure that out?
Well, that's a whole other podcast. I will try to summarize it really quick. After I had my daughter, I got really sick with Epstein-Barr, and my life changed because I'd never been sick really in my life. And it really changed my attitude wasn't as positive. At first it was like at the beginning it was like, "Oh, I'll get through this. It's going to be fine. Like this is another lesson." And then I was sick for then I think like 2 years I was sick, and I was starting to think, "Oh my gosh, like I'm never going to be able to travel. I'm never going to be able to." I mean, I was so sick, I couldn't really function in society. I couldn't walk. I couldn't do my daily walks. I couldn't work out. Yeah, so that was a really hard time for me. And what happens is that your brain gets in a loop cycle that actually creates a fight or flight response. So when you get super sick or you get poisoned or you get a really emotional, traumatic event in your life, basically, I've had every one of those events. I found out later. So basically, quick story. I was super, super sick. I just wasn't getting better. My immune system was just catching all these sort of things. And my diet was so clean, and I was on great vitamins, and I just reached the bottom and was exposed to a program called DNRS, Dynamic Neural Retraining Program. And they teach you that when you get really sick with Lyme's disease or Epstein-Barr, that your body actually goes in a loop system, and it becomes in a fight or flight response, a constant fight or flight response.
It's parasympathetic?
Mm-hmm. Yep, that is. It's a limbic system is how they define it. It's a limbic system response. So I signed up for their program, and it's a really, really intensive program. And it's rewiring your brain to get out of fight and flight. And it's a dedicated hour a day of practice for 6 months. And it's not only an hour a day, you're catching your thoughts all day. And I think 3 months in, one of their things they tell you is like, stop following bad news. Stop exposing yourself to social media that always is constantly sharing bad news. And I was trying, it was a hard thing to find good news. Like I'm like looking through what my friends are posting, and it's just like, someone died here, and this is disease here, and the world is ending, and the planet is destroyed. And I was thinking, gosh, like this is really strange. And then I started thinking, gosh, everyone's limbic system is impaired because everyone's sharing bad news, but it's just, I'm more intense. So one morning I woke up,
You're more sensitive to it.
Super, super sensitive. Are you more sensitive?
I'm super sensitive. I don't watch the news. I can't handle it.
Like, for example, my husband was watching a zombie comedy last night, and all night I dreamed about zombies, but it wasn't a comedy, okay? And it was just all traumatic. And like
the dream, I was not laughing.
Underneath my house, like I was digging a whole room underneath my house to protect me from zombies. That's when I woke up. So I'm super sensitive, and I wasn't even watching it. I was on my phone working while he was watching this, but it was all subliminally going in. But yeah, so the podcast, that's the way the podcast was born, as I was getting my strength back and getting my life back. I woke up one morning, and this is really how my life works.
I wake up and I make decisions.
Yeah, and I was like, I need to start a podcast. I'd never listened to a podcast before. I didn't even know what it was, what podcasting was. But I was like, I need to start a podcast about the good in the world. And there we go.
So you literally decided to be the good.
Yeah, I need that shirt. Is that the one on your website? I believe
that's one of them. We'll send you.
Okay. I'm gonna get that shirt. But yeah, and that's how the podcast started, and it has been amazing. It's been sort of a selfish journey too, because it's been my healing journey, and been able to
teach what you need, or you make what you need, or I want to just real quick echo what Keith said. Like the journey, like I don't know, like there's just something about your energy. Like this whole journey is you're very understated in the way that you talk through some of this, which is cool. I mean, it's not good or bad. It's just I think it would be easy to lose the significance of everything that you just said, and the journey that you've gone through, because
I think
it's a lot.
Yeah, there's
here.
so much about your story
It's
that
really
I love
encouraging.
as it relates to, the platform that we're trying to promote, because like you tee it up. I'm a hippie, right?
But you said a crunchy hippie.
A crunchy hippie. I'm a granola, right? Yeah, I'm a little granola.
Like, I live in LA. Like I'm a half a step away from being hippie, but I don't know what crunchy
You're
is.
pretty crunchy, actually. I listen to you on the podcast. So crunchy means that you're always you're always looking for like holistic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so like, then that makes me crunchy. Oh
yeah, you're totally crunchy.
I'm all about my mushrooms and turmeric. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you come on. So instantly, you can, and I'm not me, but like just like, oh, here we go. What are we going to talk about? And it's like, oh, but I'm an entrepreneur that believes that, nothing is impossible. It's like, okay, but then you grew up lower economic status. You battled a lot of struggles and all of this stuff in between then and now. And it's like, oh, like there's so much relatable to you regardless of where you come from. And I thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah.
And in sharing and being vulnerable and opening up a lot of those things. Because, I don't know how often you talk about it publicly, but it's all awesome, especially for the our audience and what we talk about a lot. So, but we're coming to a close.
Well, you guys are awesome. I didn't have any idea what I'd talk about coming on here, and I just want to say, you guys do have a knack of just a great conversation. I love what you guys are doing, and I appreciate coming on so much. I appreciate being here.
Well, thank you
so much.
We will have you on your show now.
You're ready to come on.
So,
but
we
I
always
want
have
to ask
one final question.
Our final question, and just say thank you again, and ask, what would you like to leave the listeners with today?
I would like to say, believe in yourself and that anything is possible. And if you have a dream, dream that dream every day. Wake up and visualize your dream every day. And it will come to pass. It will come to pass. Just make sure you're dreaming every day.